Hi, this is Terry Bates. We're here at Lake Washington in Chatham, Mississippi. I'd like to welcome everybody here. We're trying to catch a few bass on a cold, windy spring morning. Well, this is a little Oxbow lake that used to be part of the Mississippi River 100 years ago. It's been separated now, and all we have basically habitat in here to fish is boat docks and cypress trees and cypress knees. And the lake is really fertile. It's got a lot of fish in it, got a lot of shad, got a lot of bass, got a lot of crappie. Springtime is a good time to fish. We're running right now about 57-degree water temperature, and we're just trying to get a bite this morning on a spinner bait and flipping some plastic. The bluegill stay in the trees more than the shad do, so I'm using kind of a darker bait this morning. Because one thing is we're in a kind of a pre-spawn period, and bass traditionally don't like brim anywhere close to their bed, so they're not quite bedding yet, but they're not very far from it. They're thinking about it anyways. So a little bit later in the year, I think they feed more on the shad than they do on the brim. But
about crawfish, is that a player in the forward base down here at all, crawfish?
Yes, there's a lot of crawfish in the area down here, and we use a lot of crawfish imitating baits. The delta is traditionally really rich with crawfish, not just in the lakes, but they actually raise crawfish not very far from here for commercial purposes. But there's lots of crawfish in all these little Oxbow lakes.
Now you mentioned there's a couple different kind of lakes. You got true cut-off Oxbows, and then you got the ones that connect to the river, and you're reading the trees to tell the difference between the two.
That's correct. All our lakes that are hooked to the Mississippi River that still get river water in them, they have willow trees in them. You'll see occasionally cypress trees that are up on the bank, but because the water fluctuates so much, the cypress trees can't survive. So, like on Lake Ferguson, the water be this high today. Well, in 2 weeks from now, these trees could have 10 or 15 foot of water on them. And the willow trees have adapted where they can pretty much survive that, as long as it doesn't last too terribly long, where the cypress trees can't. So, it's just two totally different fisheries that you're fishing, and they're only just a few miles apart.
All right. Got there?
We got a largemouth that's eating a little small crawfish. A lot of the crawfish this time of year are small, so we're using a small crawfish imitating bait. A nice little, I believe that's a little young female. She guffed it right in.
Right up in that cover?
Right up in those cypress knees. And she's probably a keeper. It got to be 15 inches to keep. She's borderline.
Well,
pretty fish.
Keeper next time.
Right.
What a pretty fish.
Pretty fish. Just from fishing down here so much, there's so much of this stuff that looks alike that there's no fish hardly ever on it. And then you go to other areas and there'll be bunches of fish there. And it's something that either the bottom is more sandier than muddy, or something that the fish like. And you just have to fish till you figure out where those areas are. There we go. Another little fat Lake Washington bass. It's a little chunk. Water temperature right now is 58, and we're on a post-front day. They're really slow. You just gotta kind of let them eat it. Give them a second, and then caught this one on what's called a mid-sized brush hog. Water's relatively clear, so we're throwing this as a watermelon candy, and what they call spiking the tail. You just got to make sure they got a hold of it before you set the hook. That's a little female. This is a really shallow lake. Where we're at right here, probably all the way across there is not over about 8 foot deep. The deepest water is only about 20 foot, and it's down around in the center part of the lake.
This might be a good little place to come down here and do a little bass fishing and mix in some world-class crappie fishing if they're looking for a fishing vacation.
This is absolutely a beautiful lake. It's got some really, really pretty scenery in it, and it's got some really, really good fish in it. Bass and crappie. Best times of year to fish here are really starting in the middle of February through about the 1st of June, and starting again in October. Really all winter long we fish down here, and you're subject to catch a 8-10 pounder anytime you come down here. The lakes has got that size fish in it, and it's got a lot of 3 to 5 pound fish in it. And it does get a lot of fishing pressure in the spring, but it doesn't get as much in the fall. So it's located in Chatham, Mississippi, which is about 20 miles south of Greenville, Mississippi, on the very west side of the state. We're about, probably from where we're sitting at, we're about 3 miles from the Mississippi River. And this used to be part of the Mississippi River 100 years ago, before the Mother Nature changed her course.
So when y'all do tournaments down here, about what kind of weight for a team tournament, 5-fish limit, 4-fish limit, what does it take to do well here?
Usually you got to have between 18 or 20 plus with 5 fish to win. The largest string I've ever known down here was 31 pounds. That was with 5 fish. That was a long time ago. But most of the time you're going to have around 20 pounds to get to win. So it's, like I said, it's got some really good fish in it. They've stocked Florida bass in here a long time ago, and I think these are kind of a hybrid northern Florida bass, and they're really short, chunky, and fight really well.